Welcome back to Newsmakers. It's a City Council panel. We are with councillors Bob Shearing, Chrissie Williams and Helen Broughton. I suppose this is one of those dovetail issues, public transport, when it comes to ECAN and the City Council. And I'm keen to know from you good people whether you believe the City Council should assume full responsibility for the public transport network and all that's entailed in Greater Christchurch. What do you think, Chrissie?
Just remembering that I'm a director of Red Bus, but I still have the ability to speak about public transport. I'm not too worried about who runs it, but I believe that there needs to be more an integrated approach. Currently, we've got one organisation, Environment Canterbury, setting the timetables and the tenders, and then we've got council putting in the infrastructure, and there's a big gap between that. But there's also a big gap between what ECAN does and what the operators would think would be best practice. So operators could actually reduce the number of buses that they had if they could have a bit more influence on the timetable. So absolutely, I think there needs to be more integration. ECAN has a real philosophy of building public transport before demand. I'm not sure the council would do that. I think City Council would probably follow demand if they were in charge. So there would be a different philosophy there if the council was running it. Just as far as the council goes, I don't see a strong City Council. I don't see a strong commitment to public transport at the moment. We've had a lot of, through the annual plan, we've had a lot of loss of infrastructure for public transport. So I would be quite worried at the moment if the council was running buses.
Although if we look at the transport interchange and the ever-increasing cost of that in terms of the liability to ratepayers, surely that's a serious commitment to public transport, isn't it? 121 million or something, isn't it? Or thereabouts, roughly?
Not quite that high.
Give it time.
It's 112 million.
112.
112.
Okay.
I've got the figures this morning, yeah.
What do you think about the state of affairs with public transport and the council's management?
Like Chrissie said, really who runs it is probably irrelevant. It's a matter of getting that integration. I think, and Chrissie said there's not the commitment. I think there probably is the commitment around the table. It's more what the direction's coming from government that's sort of perhaps leading where the investment is at present. But we just had a regional transport committee meeting this morning, and we had a presentation from Rail and said, well, there's some diesel trains going to come available from Auckland next year. Why aren't you thinking about buying those? And,
wow.
and the gentleman said, well, all you need to do is get some carriages and away you go. You've got an urban rail system. So there's something to think about. And, think about a train coming from Rolleston, train coming from Rangiora. It can be done pretty much, from his point of view, can be done very easily. Whether there's a commitment here, of course, is another thing.
Are you in favour of exploring that?
Oh, absolutely. I think we've got to look at all forms of transport corridors. I'm a fan of park and ride, and in our patch in Hornby, I think there's an opportunity out there to put park and ride in out there. I know there's an opportunity in Belfast to put some sort of facility there. So absolutely, we need to be thinking about those options.
Why is it so important that this transport interchange has undergrounding? What's the thinking behind this?
I think the main thing is to get, we all know what Colombo Street's like now with all the buses, so at least it gets rid of that congestion immediately. It gives the separation between the operation and the buses, and it also gives opportunity for going forward as to what we do above the ground as well, which we haven't considered, but there's all sorts of possibilities.
Would it be fair to say the Transport Agency considered undergrounding an indulgence?
Yes. I mean, that I think happened.
Yeah.
I understand that council staff are still working with the Transport Agency and hoping to get some adjustments. I've always had concerns that we're gold plating our transport system. So I've got a different view. It's very much a minority view. But I believe the expenditure as we have planned on public transport is gold plating. We have to get a good public transport system, but I think on the bus exchange we've gone over the top, and I would have preferred that we extended our current bus exchange and just moved gradually to improvement.
Okay, but we've already got a bus exchange that outlived its life in what, 5 years? We need to be looking further ahead than that.
Well, I'm saying extend.
And we all want some sort of efficient transport system, public transport system. Ultimately, that's going to be some sort of rail, light rail, call it what you like. If we've got an underground depot You know, run your light rail underground down Colombo Street.
The bus exchange that we have at the moment, I would argue, if I can be so outspoken, that it was never actually geared up for full capacity, because the day it opened there were buses that were already networked on the road, weren't they, for pickups?
Yeah, Colombo Street.
Was that poor planning in hindsight and brutal
I
honesty?
wasn't there, Mike, so I don't know.
All care, no responsibility.
I wasn't there either.
You weren't there
No,
either.
I wasn't, but I mean, it was planned, so Colombo Street had platforms on it because that's the north-south buses and the east-west ones go through the exchange. I'm a bus user, I bus today. I think the bus exchange is great, but at 4 o'clock at night it's absolutely outside capacity. With the new one, technically, yes, going underground is the best solution, particularly if Litchfield Street stays one way, and we haven't had that discussion, or I haven't, with anyone at council. But as Helen says, maybe we need to, with the reduction in subsidy from the government, we need to rethink the design of that and maybe go for second best.
I'll just whip through a few issues before we go to the break. I note in the annual plan the council is proposing developing a third iconic event for Christchurch alongside Cup and Show Week and Ellerslie. Any ideas as to what could be in mind here?
Yes, I can answer
What
that.
do you know there, Helen?
Yes. I actually phoned a senior events person yesterday, and the two iconic events, we've got three, and it depends how you define them. We've got the show and Cup Week.
Yeah.
We have buskers, potentially, as a summer event.
Right.
We have the Ellerslie Flower Show as a sort of autumn event.
Yeah.
And there's a gap between then and Show and Cup Week. The plan is to have another event, a third iconic event, and it would be the Antarctic Festival, possibly moved back to, in fact, late winter.
Wow. Okay.
And they're planning, and they are approaching central government and hope to have this up and running in 2012.
Very quick judgment.
Yes.
Very quick judgment call. Has Ellerslie proven to be demonstrably a winner for the city?
I can't say that yet. I haven't seen the figures for this year. I would say they would be lucky to have broken even with the reduction in numbers. I mean, the weather didn't help.
No.
But there was also the honeymoon effect last year. So I think it will lose its appeal over time. I think that it has had a novelty appeal. Even this time for me, it felt a little bit, I've seen this before. So I'm just not sure it's got the sustainability that people say it has.
Okay. How uncharitable of you, Chrissie.
It is, isn't it?
Do you think it's a winner, Bob?
I have a completely different view on that, and I think that, yes, obviously the first time round it did have a novelty effect, and I agree, but from here on in, it'll go forward and become a iconic event as it's supposed to be. As Chrissie said, we haven't seen the numbers yet, so we don't know as far as the actual finances. But I'm, having spent a couple of times down there, I thought it was a wonderful event, fantastic, everything, the effort that went into those displays was just fantastic, and people come to respect that.
Very quickly, yes or no, was it a winner? Is it a winner?
I think we have to have a garden festival in Christchurch. It's working well, and so I think it's, and to give staff and councillors their due, we did take a bit of a punt on it, and it has actually worked.
Okay. There you go. So I think we've got a 2-1 vote on that.
One thing we do need to do, though, now that we've got it established, and it was a criticism that came through this year, we need to work with all the voluntary organisations that are involved in the garden sector as well, and there was a little bit of a lack separation there, and we need to repair that.
All right. Plenty more to discuss. Do stay with us.